And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
A real quick disclaimer before I do this, I did a paid preview for Mage Tower before it went to Kickstarter. I like tower defense games on the computer, although I haven't played many of them recently because they have started feeling samey. What it is if you've never played one of these, you build towers on the board, enemies march towards your base and you blow all the enemies up. And then more enemies come and you blow them up. And they get stronger and stronger and you build better towers to shoot them down. But eventually they're going to come and get you. So, that's what Mage Tower is. Mage Tower is a game in which enemies are coming towards you and you are playing different things and shooting these enemies down, and the last person standing is the victor. Let's take a look. This game is not really a deck building game, although kind of you build your own deck at the beginning of the game. Everyone gets 2 archers, 2 elite archers, and a knight. And then you will get 8 other random cards, and that's your 13 card deck for the game. However, instead of just taking 8 random cards from this massive deck with over 150 cards, you can draft them. That's what they say advanced players should do, and you really should draft them. Each player will then shuffle his hand and draw 2 cards. You will also have a monster card deck. Yay! Now these monsters are going to come after you, but at the beginning of your turn, the first thing you do is you will draw 2 cards, and you will also take 1 gold. Woohoo! Everyone likes gold. Then you're going to have monsters attack you. Well, we won't worry about that for now, but you'll have monsters come out. So what you'll do is from the top of the pile, you will draw up to 10 to 12 points worth of monsters. So this one is a demon, it's 5. And then this one here is another demon, that's 5. And that is 10. So I'm done. If I had drawn, let's say I hadn't drawn a second demon, and I had drawn a giant, oh, he's also 5. Let's say I had drawn a warlock, he's 8. Then another warlock, 11, I would have stopped. Okay, so let's say that's what I have drawn here. And each of these monsters, let's see, we take a closer look, you can see that they have an attack and they have a life value. They also have special abilities on them. Now, once these monsters come out, I will try to kill them. Now, I will play cards that are abilities. You'll notice this one here says deal 5 damage. What that means is I do 5 damage to the first monster in line, which happens to be the demon. Boom! Yeah, he's dead. And since I did 5 damage, and this shows an arrow, 1 damage carries over onto the next person. Now, the game comes with lots of dice for damage. In fact, I'm supposed to keep track of my own damage, 20 life with these 6-sided dice. A 20-sided die would have made a whole lot more sense, but hey, you know, beggars can't be choosers. So this demon is killed. I can play as many cards as I want, except I only have 7 energy. This card costs 4 energy to play, as you can see, by the 4 at the top. So I could not play another elite archer. Although I could play another regular archer and do 3 more damage. Bam, bam, I just killed all the monsters. Now, that's a rarity. I'm not going to be able to kill all the monsters most of the time. So let's say I hadn't been able to kill one of the warlocks. At the end of that turn, the warlock becomes angry. Now this one says when a warlock becomes angry, it deals 1 damage to me. So boom, down to 19 life. At the beginning of a turn, an angry monster will deal damage to you. So he doesn't actually become angry at the end of your turn. He waits to the beginning of next turn. First, at the beginning of my turn, angry monsters deal damage to me. If there was an angry monster, boom. Let's say he was angry, he would do 2 damage to me. Then all unangry monsters become angry. And then next turn they'll do damage to me. So you basically have 2 turns before a monster will do damage to you, so you're trying to kill them. Now there's 2 ways that you can do damage to them. One is by playing these ability cards, but you also can play defenders. This is a basic defender. I can put this knight out in front of me in a row, and he has 3 attack and 4 life, and I can use him to fight monsters, but he'll take damage, and when he's dead, he goes back in my deck. Now there's lots of different cards that this game comes with. There's all sorts of abilities. For example, Magic Missile, which you can attack the darkness with. The closest monster is an orc. You do 3 damage, then you put it on top of your deck. It's free to play. Here I can draw 4 cards. Here I can do 2 damage to each of the 3 closest monsters, and if they're angry, they're not angry anymore. Here, I can do 5 damage, and if I pay 7 gold, it becomes 13 damage. Here, I can gain 2 life and a gold. Here, I can do 2 damage and 3 damage to each opponent. Here, I can do 2 damage to the closest monster and 2 to the farthest. Here, I got Chain Lightning and Mead Hall, and it's unlimited power and murder, which I can kill any monster, but then I remove it from the game permanently. So there's all different abilities. There's also all kinds of cool defenders. We have a unicorn. Woohoo! And notice that the unicorn at the beginning of the game, he comes in my starting hand. That's nice of him. We have Brocky, the noble mercenary, an acolyte, tree folk, the king's guard, a crow, a frog familiar, a griffin rider, spearmen, and each of these people has special abilities, and there's so many of them. I'm only showing you just a few of the many different ones. But there's also more than just these things. There's monsters, which I can play into my opponent's lineup. Okay, and that's slightly evil. There are permanents that give me permanent abilities that I put in front of me. Like, for example, here, creativity. At the beginning of my turn, I draw an additional card. But when I play a card that costs 4 more energy, I have to sacrifice it, discard it. At the beginning of my turn, I put a counter on here, and I can sacrifice it to take 1 energy for each counter. So if you have bigger cards, it can give you more energy per turn. Here's the Mother Lode. It gives me 3 gold at the beginning of the round, and at the beginning of the game, and that's about it. And there's even cards that cost large amounts. Well, actually, don't forget, there's equipment that you can put on defenders. This gives +4 to a defender. Here's Molten Armor. But there's big cards, too. A Flame Dragon. Look at this one. It costs 13, the last Beacon of Terror. Well, how can you play that? Well, only if you can somehow find ways to do other energy. One of those ways is by gold. There are 3 cards that you can buy with gold. This one here costs 4, Glory Seeking, which does 2 damage and then lets you draw a card. So basically it's a free 2 damage and it costs 0. Summoning, which gives you 2 energy, costing 4 gold, lets you draw a card. And Intellect, which lets you draw 2 cards, basically, for 3 gold. So you can buy these rewards and add them to your deck, so your deck will get more powerful. Although there are also other cards that will add confusion to your deck, which costs 1 to do 1 damage, which is pretty bad. And there are other cards, spawn cards, that might come out, like the demons. If the demon gets angry, he brings out demon spawn. And other cards will summon things. So anyway, that's how the game works. The game is going to keep playing until one person is dead, the monsters have taken you out, and then the other person wins in a 2-player game. Or if one person has gone through his deck twice, then you've both survived, then whoever's taken less damage wins. There's also a cooperative monster card deck where you're working together and each of these monsters comes out. But these are big, mean, really horrible, nasty monsters, and you need to make it through this deck basically working together. Every game is going to play differently because there's so many different cards that you can draft, and you're only going to use 8 out of the I'm not even sure how many different cards there are, but there is a ton of them in the game. Like I said, there's over 100 of them, 166 different cards that you can have. So anyway, those are different ways to play the game. One of the really neat concepts of Mage Tower is just how many different characters, or how many different cards, 166 different cards, and you're only using 8 of those cards, so if each person has 8 different cards, you will be able to play 10 games where every single card is different, and that's never going to happen, and you have 6 cards left over. It's fun. It really is. The cards, I think, are balanced. Man, there's so many, though. I don't know how they could playtest all this. And man, it must have been a lot of work. The cards that are much, much better have a higher cost. Certainly, I think you must play with drafting. You must play with drafting, because otherwise your cards don't make as much sense together, and you might have a bunch of cards which, you think, well, these aren't really that cool, or you have a whole bunch of high-cost cards, and you need low-cost and high-cost cards in your deck. So drafting is much better. In fact, I would go a step beyond what the game says. Instead of putting out 8 characters and you draft back and forth, I would put out 12 characters, you draft back and forth, and throw 4 of them out, and then put out 12 more cards. That gives you more choices, and cards that no one really wants in that particular game you can throw out. Knowing which reward cards to buy is very critical in this game. It gives you get a whole bunch of those in your deck. You won't get a whole bunch, but you get several of those. They're free cards. They give you extra things that you can do. Very useful. And knowing sometimes when to hold your defenders back and maybe use them to block someone in the future, it's pretty cool. The 3 to 4 player game is not as impressive to me because you're using one deck of cards, and so it's not quite as fair. See, when you play 2 players, you each have your own monster deck that's identical. And so you each get the same monsters. You might get harder monsters than me, but I know that on a future turn you're going to get easier ones, and I'll get the harder ones. If you're all playing out of the same deck, then the one person might get easier enemies than another person. So it doesn't balance out as well. But that doesn't matter, because if you're playing with that many people, then play the cooperative game. It's fairly tough. I mean, you really have to work together. And so I like that. Although, as big of a cooperative person as I am, I think I like the head-to-head better than this. And it plays fairly quickly. Once you know what you're doing, and once you get over how the system works, it just plays very smoothly back and forth. They used a lot of clip art. Actually, I think they used all clip art from, public domain paintings and stuff. And it looks fine. I might have liked the game better if they had shelled out the cash for their own artwork and such. But I can live with this, and I still think the cards look a lot like Magic the Gathering cards. I wish they had done something to kind of differentiate that from that. But it plays nothing like Magic the Gathering, so there's that. So there's still a lot of depth to this game that I haven't explored, and if you play it, you're not going to get something that you can play a couple times and you're done with. You can try out different combinations, and it's really interesting. You have a 13-card deck that might grow to 16, 17 cards by the end of the game, but that's it. That sounds odd, but it works pretty well in this game. Certainly a unique game. This is the kind of stuff that I like to see Kickstarter producing. Mage Tower.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Ah! Shut the door!